We should start with let's
beginning.
Go, yeah.
Start at the beginning.
Go back in time.
Back in time. Well, with the aircraft there, right? I guess we were brought up. I think we'd be middle class, middle class, not upper middle class. Anyway, we didn't hurt for anything. We fed well. We were fed well.
Yeah.
Had good parents. I was about 6 years old, and the old man came home. I don't know if you remember. And he says, "I bought an airplane." He said. My mother looked at him. She says, "You don't know how to fly." And he said, "Well, I'm going to learn, right?" Because that was the old man. Nothing stopped him, right? For anything. And I got the bug then, I think. But it was also around that time there when I started to have my first drink.
How old were you?
I was 6 or 7, about then. Dad had sent me and his buddies off. "Go, Brucey, go open us up some beers." So I go open up
How
a
old
beer.
were you?
I was 6 or 7, yeah, probably. And I'd take a swig out of each one and take it back, and they thought it was funny when it come out foamy. It was, "Oh, I spilled it or I dropped it or whatever," right?
So who was laughing? The parents?
Oh, yeah, Dad and Uncle Bruce and the rest of them, right? I come from a long line of alcoholics on the paternal side there, I think. My dad, my Uncle Bruce, and my Aunt Dorothy, and Grandpa, and all on my father's side on there. And wherever the old man went any place, he had a beer between his legs driving and a 2-4 behind the seat. You remember that, right? And I got old enough to do that. I did the same thing because that's what everybody did. I grew up that way. You go fishing, you have a beer. Sitting in the boat, have a beer. Driving, you have a beer. In the boat, you have a beer, right? And just the way I was brought up like that. But I never really felt right, here. Didn't Never been comfortable, was never comfortable in my own skin. You guys have to, sort of give me a break here because I don't normally do this kind of stuff. I could sit here for 2 hours and talk, right, about things, but sometimes you get into these like this. But yeah, I was never really comfortable in my skin at all there, right? I was either trying to be out in front of everything or behind, in the background there all the time.
Do you remember Dad? He was an alcoholic and he was hospitalized. At Bellwood was. And,
he was in Vancouver too. Got hospitalized.
Yeah.
That's when they zapped him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No, it was at Bellwood.
Was it? Was it there? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
So it's like a side trip. So around about when you were just 12 or 13, the parents. The whole family just collapsed. Yeah. Yeah,
self-destructed, yeah.
Yeah.
Self-destructed. He had a dry cleaning business. He did quite well, sold dry cleaning machinery. Was quite successful at doing that, and then everything fell apart because of drinking, right? Wrapped the old Parisienne around the tree there, coming home from Buttonville. Jan and I were airport rats when we grew up. Buttonville, you probably won't believe it now, but it used to be a nice little grass strip like a farm out there. No control towers, no radios, any of that. We spent all our time out there hanging around the aircraft. Mm-hmm. And they had the flying club there. Mm-hmm. The old man had bought a bigger airplane. He had Stinson. Then he went and bought a Navion, which had retractable gear on it, sliding canopy, 4 passengers. And then they had barbecues at the flying club, and they'd be drinking beer. And remember him landing with the wheels up twice?
Yeah, and the propeller was curled because it hit the ground.
Yeah, yeah. They had a big Buck Rogers light in there, bright like this here, and a bell. And the light burned out, and the bell, they didn't like it. It was too loud, so they took it up. That was to tell you if the wheels were up or down, right, when the power was back. And it was lucky it was a grass strip. It didn't do a lot of damage. But, they'd sit there and drink beer and have hot dogs and stuff. And
I kind of wonder if the time with the Stinson when he was out over Lake Ontario and radioed the Hamilton Heart Police that the plane was going down.
Yeah.
He was probably drunk.
Well, he could have been, but that turned out to be a big slug of solder and the oil cooler.
He ended up in a blueberry patch.
Yeah.
But let's move on though.
Yeah.
The parents split up.
Yep.
The house was foreclosed in Willowdale.
Yep.
And we had to move to Goderich.
Yep.
And
from the big city back to the little town.
Well, and there was a lot of upheaval. Our father only phoned in occasionally. He
was selling airplanes in for Cessna.
Yeah.
Yeah. as a assessment salesman, and he was quite successful. He was a good salesman. He could sell anything,
Yeah, he was.
whatnot.
Yes, a very charming guy
Yeah.
with a terrible demonic oppression.
Yeah.
But I remember around, you were about 16, and you were getting into all kinds of trouble.
Oh, I was getting into trouble younger than that. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, I was getting into trouble like 12, 13 years old because we were drinking and we were sniffing glue and doing all that kind of good stuff when we were younger and stuff, just because didn't want to be around anything else, right? You know, and school, I mean, just wasn't for me, right? I was in, spent my time, and they booted me out in grade 9 there, said don't come back and whatnot.
There's probably a brass plaque at the Goderich District Collegiate
Yeah,
Institute.
don't come back.
Don't come back.
Yeah, that's sort of when the other journey started there, because
Yeah, 'cause you were about 16 when you disappeared.
yep, in September of 1968, I'd gone down to London, Ontario, just hitchhiked down there and started hanging out with some other people, and that's when we started tripping, doing things with LSD. And then a couple of us decided, let's go to Vancouver because it's warmer out there in the wintertime. So we hitchhiked to Sudbury, ran into this guy that just got out of, I forget what the name of the military jail was. And he decided we needed money. So they rolled this guy, and then we jumped freight trains and we ran him freight trains all the way out to Vancouver there and whatnot. And we're on and off the trains, and of course had no money or anything, go steal food out of
So you and a
stores.
couple other 16-year-olds.
There was 4 of us all together. Yeah, Larry was the oldest one on there,
So you
right?
get to Vancouver, and what do you do?
Hit the street, lived on the streets there, and whatnot. And there was a lot going on in Vancouver in '68. It was northern San Francisco, I guess. A lot of things. And I go up on 4th Avenue. I go up and I play hippie for a couple of weeks up there.
Played hippie.
Played hippie up there, hung out with the hippies up there.
This is 1968.
Yeah, 4th Avenue up there. And then it get boring, right? Because, it's peace and love and all this stuff. And I needed some action. And I go down in the downtown east side. Everybody knows where that is. So you see it in the news all the time. It was different in 1968. It was a whole different scene down there. But I go and I walk across the Burrard Street Bridge and I change clothes. And I hit a 38, light frame 38 that I picked up off a guy. And I hung out with some bad people down there. They were doing rips and doing stuff like that and drugs and whatnot. And then that just had to get out of Dodge after a few weeks to get out
When
of
was
there.
it that you phoned Mom and told her?
In October or something like that. I don't know which side of the Fraser I was on at the time, or Falls Creek, yeah.
The hippie group to
Yep. Down to there and get into all kinds of trouble on both sides, right? And then I think, it was probably when Douglas came out, my cousin came out, and we fell into a pretty rough crowd there. There's some pretty interesting tales with that and whatnot, and with things like grenades and a lot of drugs and whatnot, and a bad deal, and we had to get out of town because there was people after us then. And we rode the train back this time. We paid for it and stuff. And we finally got arrested. I was 17 years old, and we both got arrested for trafficking, right? I got off. Well, I got a year's suspension. Pretty well got off, right? Douglas went to Ocala. And I said, no, this isn't my life. This isn't what I want.
So how did you go from on the street in Vancouver, doing drugs and getting into trouble, to becoming a commercial pilot?
Well, it was in my
There's a leap.
there is a leap, yeah. Well, I never really thought a lot of myself, right? I figured I was a loser all my life, kicked out of school and this and that, and people never felt good around people, never felt right on there. And I got a job. I got a job on the BC ferries as a busboy, and I worked on that. And then I went on. I had to just get right off the street because it was a dead end, just a dead end. Yeah, it's even worse now, but it was a dead end then too, because I was just the direction I was going. Right, I could just see it going like this, and I said, I can't do this. So I got a job, and I got a good job there on the ferries was good paying. Then I got a job in cable television, and I was worked line construction, putting up cable and climbing poles and stuff like that. Went out to the Abbotsford Air Show in 1970, I think it was. 2 years after I hit the street, or I was 18, and went out there in 1970. So, yeah, I want to learn to fly. So I took my flying lesson, the first one, the next day, right? And worked at that and got my commercial pilot in 1971. Got my license. So it's been almost 51 years.
From basic pilot to commercial
Yep,
license?
yep, right in there. That's what I wanted to do. That's how I wanted to spend my life. That's all because I control. You see?
Well, that's not an issue for anyone.
No, it's not.
Control?
Because you're there and you've got complete control of everything, right? You know, like yourself, it's me to keep it up here, right? Other than a mechanical failure or fire or something like that, even then you're still in control of the aircraft, right? And that was a big thing, control, right? Because the first time in my life I had control over anything, right? On there. And it was hard getting the job, but I got it. I ended up north, and the guys that I worked with up there, they were ex-World War II pilots, right? And they were hard drinkers. They were hard, could fly in anything, carry any load, and I fit right in with them, right? Mm-hmm. You'd work all day long, and you'd drink till 2 in the morning and into an airplane at 6 or 7 in the morning and stuff like that. And
So you're like 20?
Yeah, 20, yeah, turned loose up north, turned loose in an airplane, and away you go. I loved it. It was great.
Where in the north?
I was in northern Manitoba. I was in northern Saskatchewan. On the summers, I went on contract up in the Barren Lands. So I was right up in the Barrens for 3.5, 4 months. Just boss says, we'll see you in the fall, right? And you're up there, right? And you're up nowhere. Maps were nothing up there then. Like maps were big white spots on them and stuff. And it was great. It was a great life. But there again, you know, when you're not flying, I'm off and I was drinking, right? Smoking weed and all that kind of stuff.
I'm somewhere. So, you got married?
Did? Yep. Yeah, got married. And messed that marriage up because of alcohol and whatnot. Wasn't doing any drugs, just drinking pretty well, right? You know, at the time you're at a party and get off a joint or something, right? But just stayed away from that and drank, right? It wasn't a problem, right? You know, I just at that time, but it got to be a problem, right? And I was flying out of Port Hardy. I was working for Air BC at the time, and seniority number 15 out of 140 pilots. And they got amalgamated or taken into Air Canada, and I got fired because going to a party at night was more important for me showing up for a job. And when I showed up, I was so hungover, could hardly see, right? And it was just, and we're all like that. Everybody, the whole group of us, you know, guys, we're like that everywhere. It's not like that now, so you guys are okay. So the whole culture has changed, believe me, right? The youngsters now won't even have a beer after work, right, or something.
Yeah. So you're in Campbell River,
yeah,
right? Married.
Campbell River, married Annie,
and
had 2 kids,
2 beautiful children,
and
drinking,
and made a geographical change, right? You guys have heard of that, eh? You know, because if you move someplace else, all your problems go away, right? Yeah, it doesn't work that way. No, because they catch up to you.
Yeah.
And I went on a dry drunk for about 4 years there, 4 or 5 years. Didn't drink. I was sitting there. If I'd be sitting with people, her aunt was in AA, right? Her aunt there. If I saw something on TV, it's mentioned alcoholism or alcoholics, I cringed inside, right? I wasn't an alcoholic, but I thought they didn't want anybody looking at me, right? You know, everybody knew but me about that.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. Everybody else knows.
Yeah.
That's probably.
Yeah. And anyway, that spent 4 years up there, I think, and then we came back down to the coast into Port McNeill to make a visit to an old friend of mine, Gordy. You know, Gordon is still a good friend of mine, but we weren't allowed to be alone together. Our wives would not let us be alone together because we just got into trouble, right? And it got to be too much. He, by the way, down the road there, got into AA and stopped drinking and whatnot, which was really cool.
When did the cocaine enter?
Cocaine had always been in the picture right from the 60s there.
The cocaine
and whatnot, but it's always in there, but it was never a problem. But in Port McNeill, when we moved there, went down for a visit, and I ended up Oh, I think I'm going to start flying because I didn't fly all the time. I was up in the interior. I ran logging machines out there, skidders and feller bunchers and stuff like that and whatnot, and did some flying in the summertime for a guy. And that's when I crashed the airplane up there, doing a favor for a guy up in the mountain. You remember me telling you that?
Was that the one where you
The
crashed
Stinson.
in the lake?
It was a Stinson, yeah, off the end of the lake, yeah, on there, a big high lake there and stuff. And nobody got hurt in it, but it was very embarrassing. And whatnot. There was no drugs or alcohol involved with that. It was just, I wasn't drinking. As I said, I was on a dry drunk, which is probably worse than anything, because I was probably a bag of misery to be around.
Did you have passengers when you
No,
crashed?
no, I had one guy there. I was doing a favor for a guy. He asked me, I got a couple of my friends up there, they're caribou hunting. Could you pick them up? And yeah, sure, I'll go out and pick them up. And so I hauled one guy and a bunch out and went back to get Dave, the other guy, and we just had a caribou head tied on the side of the float. It's a little wee tiny lake, but it was up really high, about 5,200 feet. And the temperature had gone up about 10, 15 degrees between the first trip and the last one. And we couldn't get off this lake. Try, and get around. Finally came around, we bounced off a rock and sort of staggered into the air and then hit the swamp and think, oh, we're all good here. We're in the swamp. Going to slid and hit a big rock about 6 feet high, and we flipped over and ended on our back there. So
Were the airplanes upside down?
yeah, airplane's upside down. Yeah, we crawled out. And
You had a
stuff.
fishing pole or no?
Oh, we had everything. There's a cabin about a mile away, an old trapper's cabin up there and stuff.
Okay, so
That's another story. That's another story.
There were a lot of adventures like
Yeah,
that.
the bears, the grizzly
Yeah.
bears and stuff.
So-
Yeah.
Do I recall correctly that there was a time that there was a cocaine deal that went bad?
Oh yeah, yeah. But so my wife and I split up in Port McNeill, and I was living down in another house down there. I started using regularly, right, like regularly, and then I started getting bigger quantities of it, like ounce type things. And I owed some money, and it was actually December the 17th, 1991. And the guys came into the house, and I was 115 pounds then.
You weighed 100.
I weighed 115 pounds then, in long shaggy hair, and I was still working. I worked every day and stuff, right? You know, stay up some nights and still work. And
So guys come into the house.
yeah, smacked me down. I was in the bathroom, had his boot on my throat and a gun on my forehead. And I didn't care if he killed me or not, right there. I didn't care. Just didn't matter to me.
Were they looking
just-
for the money or the...
Looking for money, yeah, looking for money, and it was a substantial amount there. Anyway, he didn't, because I'm still here, obviously. But I was at that point. I've never been suicidal in my life, ever. But I just didn't care because life wasn't worth anything at the time, right? The next morning, really early in the morning, I got a phone call from Vancouver head office of the company they worked for, and they said, "Bruce, hop on the sched, come on down. Got to talk about some stuff." All right. Walked into the president's office there, and he says, "Grab a chair." And he says, "Well," he says, "we know what's going on, right?" And he says, "You got a decision to make." He said, "We'll help you all we can for your problem there, if you choose to do this. Otherwise, you don't have a job anymore, right?" And he says, "But you got to do, you have to do what we say, and we'll help you all we can." His name was Vivian Wilson. He saved my life. Right there, that guy.
Took your license? You handed it?
Well, he sent me over to, his name is Dr. Bill Rozecki. He was the flight surgeon for Air Canada for 30 years, and he'd been retired. And he got into, it's always been a big problem in the industry, right? But nobody talked about it in the 50s and 60s and stuff. And with pilots drinking, flight crew drinking and whatnot. And I went in and pulled my medical out and said, "Here you go." I said, "I got a cocaine problem and an alcohol problem." And he said, "Oh, we'll have you back flying in 6 months, right? But you got to do everything I say." And we had a love-hate relationship for about 4 years, Bill and I there.
Sounds like a good sponsor.
Oh, he was a good guy, but boy, I hated him sometimes. At 18 months, it took me to get my license back.
And you were in a residential program for a while?
He said, "This is what you have to do." And so I flew back up to Port McNeill. 2 days later, I flew back down to Richmond, and I went to my first AA meeting. It was Birds of a Feather, which is for air crew, flight crew.
Isn't that a great name? Birds of a Feather.
Yeah.
It's for pilots.
I met a whole bunch of them at the the World Convention in Atlanta in 2015 when I was down there.
Yeah.
They had
That's the
their
AA
nest.
convention.
Yes, and they're called nests.
Next.
Yes, our meetings are called
Yeah.
nests.
So,
whatnot.
so you
Once,
got sober.
yeah, once a week I had to fly down to Vancouver on my own dime. They didn't charge me for the sked because the company, they kept me working, doing things, this and that, and what they kept up. His son died from cocaine overdose. Vivian's
The
son
doctor.
did.
The doctor's son?
No, Vivian Wilson, my
okay.
boss is there. And, you know, they didn't want to see it happen to me, right? You know, really good people. He's passed now, unfortunately. Yeah, so I went down every week down to the Birds of a Feather meeting. There was a meeting, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people in Port McNeill, and I went to that. And then I remember reaching out to you that I had to go into rehab, and they gave me a choice. You can go to Maple Ridge, or you could go to Victoria Life Enrichment Society in Victoria. And Dr. Ozeki, he said, I think you should go to the Victoria Life Enrichment Society.
Now, how long
personally.
of a program was that?
It was a month in there, yeah, in there. 'Cause I remember you guys footed the bill for me, and thank you again on there. And I had a wonderful time in there, sort of. You know, it was tough at first.
You fought it.
Well, of course I fought it, right? You know, I fought everything. But it was they had half of a motel and a restaurant there and stuff. And anyway, everybody had a roommate. So the first night I'm there, he said, you're in room such and such. Here's the key. So I walk in the room, and there's my roommate, and he's about 400 pounds, right? Big guy. His name was Hans. And I'm thinking, why did they put me? I got nothing in common with this guy.
You fought.
Why? Why did they put me in here? So we started talking, and Hans said, and he was from Campbell River too. I didn't know him, but he was from Campbell River. He started talking. We were talking while I was unpacking clothes. And so I rode down on my motorcycle because that was the only vehicle I had. It's like a 4-hour ride or something down there. Anyway, he said, you know, he says, I love eating. He said, I got an eating problem. And I said, oh, great. You know, so I'm thinking in my head there, I got an eating problem. He said, you know, I could take these big peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? And he said, you know, I could eat those. And he said, but not all the jelly sandwiches in the world could fill that hole that was right here. I thought, God, that's how I feel. You know, and we got along.
Talking about his stomach.
No, he wasn't. He was talking about that empty part right in here, right from there, right?
Yeah.
It was empty. And I said, God, I feel just like that. Just like that.
So you did the program.
Yeah.
And that was 1990s.
1992, I went in there. It was beginning of April, 92.
I remember you telling me about the epiphany.
Well, that was long after that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you went to the program and you were still kind of fighting.
Yeah. Well, I went to my meetings. I had my big book. And then I went up to company Wag-Air at the time. They said, well, why don't you go up to Prince Rupert, open up a base, be base manager up there, right? So I grabbed an otter and flew up there to Prince Rupert. And then I commuted, I guess, my partner at the time, Dakota Delaney's mother at the time, who Dr. Ozeki said, do not get involved with, by the way.
That would be a side trip.
Don't.
Won't go on.
Yeah, that's one someplace we don't have to go there anyway.
So you're given responsibility.
Given responsibility,
For the 90s.
Yep, this would have been 1992 when I went up there in spring of 92.
You're mostly sober?
Oh, so I didn't have a drink. Nope, didn't have a drink. Nope.
No more coke?
Nope, no drugs. Nope, I haven't had any cocaine since December the 17th, 1991. So.
But who's counting? Okay.
Who's counting? Yeah, right. Anyway, I went up there and was running the base up there and flying and we doing things and whatnot. And I didn't go to any meetings. I went to a couple when I went up there. I went to an NA meeting and it really sucked. I went to a couple of AA meetings but I was so darn busy between family and I didn't, right? And that big book sat in the bookshelf behind my head for 10 years and I never opened it, right?
Oh.
And in 2001, I had a drink because things were bad at home and I was busy at work, stressed, what the hell, right? So I had a drink, it doesn't make it any better. Yeah, had a couple of drinks.
Yeah. Sober and then.
Yeah, had a drink. And then things were really bad at home. And I said, I'm going back to AA, right? Which she didn't like. my partner there, she didn't like that at all. And I went back to AA. I remember going in there on a Wednesday night, you know, pouring and raining and blowing, just like only can do in Prince Rupert, right? Like that. And I said, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Don't want to, because I don't want to hear the whining and the crying and the moaning and everything else. I don't want to be there, but I knew I had to be there, right? Because that's just,
He knew he had to be there.
yeah, good,
And,
because I'm going back down the same road I was going before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be there, but I went. And I went to the Monday night meetings, I went to Wednesday night meetings, I went to the Thursday night meetings, and I went to the Friday night meetings, and I kept going, and I kept going. And I went around to every meeting, and I shot for a sponsor, right?
Yeah.
And Prince Rupert's not a big place. There's maybe 15,000 people there then, and there was meetings every night of AA in there, and I went to every meeting for a couple or 3 weeks. Then I found my guy, right? He says, this is the guy that pissed me off the most, because he kept saying the things that I didn't want to hear.
Yes, the perfect sponsor.
Yeah, and I went up to him and I said, Gord, I said, would you like to be my sponsor? Could I be your sponsee? And he said, yeah, read the first 164 pages of the big book and come back and talk to me again. I said, but I've read them already. And he said, read them again. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And so, just moving, I mean,
Yeah.
now you've been sober since 2000
in one, yeah.
and you got your own
Company?
charter air service in
Yeah.
Prince Rupert with who knows how many float planes.
5.
They come with just 5, right?
5.
But you're looking for
I had more, yeah.
Yeah, and Bruce is looking for pilots. And but back to that epiphany, because you told me about that.
Yeah.
That was so amazing. When was that? And what happened?
It would have been around 2002, 2003. I'm getting old here. So anyway, I had 4 kids because we split up. I ended up with custody of 4 children. 2 of them, I was not their biological father, right? But I raised them right from babies, right?
Yeah.
And then 2 that were, I was a biological father, and they're my kids. Biology doesn't come into it. Anyway, I ended up, 2 chose to live with me, right? And I just finished introducing and bringing online a new aircraft for the company. I was working for Inland Air for Trevor at the time. And I was busy, summertime, I was busy with that. I was burned out. And the kids and everything going on and stuff. And I walked into the house, I walked in there and kids, nobody's home. And it's like just deafening quiet inside there. And I walked down the hall and I forget I don't know, it was Dakota's or Delaney's room I walked into. And it just hit me. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this alone anymore, right? I can't. And I just dropped down on my knees and I started crying. Half an hour, I don't know how long it was, And in that time there, when I got up, my life changed from there forward. That I'd let go. I think it was. I'd let go. Say, I can't do this by myself. I can't do this. I need help, right? And God reached out, or whomever, or whatever. I haven't had a desire to use drugs, drink since that day. And it was always there before, right? I could always have a drink, right? I could always go do something else.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that. And my life from that time, it was like going this way here, it made a right-hand turn, and it just, it's been, ups and downs. I had a wife, and she passed away on me and whatnot. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, all right? Didn't do any of that, because I had AA, I had my friends in the program, I had God in my life. I guess I've never been a religious person. Sorry to say that in a church, but I haven't. But I've always know that there's something bigger than me, right?
Yeah.
Out there, right? Always. I've always been that way.
So that day you just
changed. Surrendered. Yeah.
on your knees,
Yeah. Yeah.
crying and
Yeah. Blubbering.
God
Crying.
said, boom.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like God. It was like just so light. No, I want to say light in my feet, but I just felt.
You felt light.
Yeah, just like a weight had been taken off my shoulders there. I went in the next day, I went into work. I remember Trevor saying something, because Trevor, whenever they'd have beer after work, they always made sure I had a Coke or orange juice or something like that. My drink of choice for years has been ice water there, by the way. So You know, and I always pack this thing around with me,
Yeah.
whatever country I go to.
It's been all over.
Well, this one hasn't. This is a fairly new one, so they wear out on there. But you know, they saw the difference in me the next day.
The next day.
The next day,
Next
yeah.
day I saw
My face was different, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wasn't all scowly and stink-eyed there and stuff like that.
the Holy Spirit
Thanks.
at work. Well, thank you, Bruce.
However, yeah,
By the way, he's my brother, if you hadn't figured that out.
yeah.
Thank you.